So the next part is to make this into an artistic type of image. So what I'm going to do is make a stamped layer, and then we'll start from there. So I'm going to hold down the Control and Alt key and come up here and pick this and hold it down, and then come down to Merge Visible and Release, and that will create a stamped copied layer right here. And I'm going to rename this layer Base. Okay, and we will, or Original or whatever. I think in my assignment sheet I said Original, so we'll say Original. And then we can turn all this stuff off. We don't need it anymore. So now we have this one, and I'm going to duplicate this layer twice. So we're going to have 3 copies of it. So we're going to have the original, and then this one here we're going to call it Wash, and then this one here is going to be Line Work. Alright, so I can turn off the wash layer and the original layer and just work on the line work layer. So first thing we're going to do is go into Photoshop's filter gallery and change this into just basically lines. So there's a couple different ways to do this. The first way is to first off, I'm going to change this layer into something called a smart filter. Okay, so I'm going to, on the layer that I'm on, line work, I'm going to come up to filter and say convert for smart filters. And the reason that we're going to do this is so that we can go back afterwards into the smart filter and edit this. If you don't do this, well, I'll show you both ways, and then that'll make more sense to you, I guess. So I won't convert it first, and I'll make a duplicate of it. Okay, so on our line work copy layer, I'm going to come up to filter. We're going to go into the filter gallery, and in the filter gallery, this is where we can have a lot of fun with our image and do all kinds of interesting effects to our images. So first thing I'll do is establish a fit view here. And so first thing it comes up to for me is plastic wrap. It might come up to something else for you guys, but basically you have these categories up here: artistic, brush strokes, distortion, sketch, stylize, and texture. So under artistic, if you do, for instance, colored pencil, you'll see what this does here for colored pencil. Cut out, right, like that. Dry brush, okay, film grain, fresco, and so on and so forth. I'm not going to go through them all because there's quite a few in here. But basically for each one, say for instance palette knife, which is the one that I want to use right here, under palette knife I can come in here and change the stroke size, the stroke detail, and the softness. So if we change the stroke size, and what I'll usually tell people is bring it all the way to the bottom first, or to the very beginning here, and see what that looks like. Obviously it doesn't really do much. And then bring it to the other extreme, all the way up. And everything in here is going to have different settings, so you're going to have to kind of just play with them, and it's really personal preference on how you want it to look. So obviously that's going to look very rough. Okay, so we're going to establish line work, so we're going to come back to artistic. So we're going to come down here. We have brush strokes, we have distort, and we have sketch. Okay, so under sketch, this is where we can kind of turn things into line work. We can do, say for instance, charcoal, chalk and charcoal, okay, bas relief, chrome. Okay, but the one I want to use here is going to be photocopy, which does a pretty good job at establishing line work. So I can, like I said, increase this all the way up so you can see what that does. You can play with the darkness setting so you can see it's fairly light there. If we bring this all the way back, we have a very, very faint lines in there. If you adjust the darkness, you can see what that does there. So it just kind of depends on the look that you're going for. You know, maybe you want some lines, but you don't want all the lines, and you want more detail. So I can kind of back this off a little bit. And once I'm all done, I'll hit OK. And that will change that layer into this. Now, if I wanted to come back and, you know, I didn't like the way that this looked, I don't have the ability to like double click on it or anything like that. If I go back into filter and back to filter gallery again, basically what you're doing is you're adding line work over the existing line work again. So as you see in here, if I change the detail, it kind of made this thing look all kind of wonky on us and a little bit weird. So the difference between a smart filter and this is, I'll show you here. So we'll do that same thing again down here on this line work. We'll come up to filter and convert for smart filters this time. It's going to tell us to enable re-editable smart filters. This selected layer will be converted into a smart object, and we'll say OK on that. And you can see here it puts this little thing in the corner indicating that this is a smart object. So now when we come into filter gallery, we'll go back in here, and that's good. I'll hit OK on that and it'll change that. But notice the difference between this one and this one. Now this line work layer has this smart filter on it, and it shows us what it's using in the filter gallery, and I can actually double click on this filter gallery, and I can go in there and decide that I want more detail and hit OK, and it changes that. And if I decide that that's too dark, I can go in there and change that again, and that will change that. Or if I decide I want to use something totally different, we can do that as well. So there's many different ways again to get line works. This is one way, the easiest way, and I don't want to confuse you guys with showing you, a ton of different options, but I'll show you one other option. And basically what we'll do is I'll duplicate this layer one more time, and we'll call it line work 2, for instance. This one here I'll just get rid of because we don't need it, so I'll bring it down into the trash can and get rid of that. So on this one here, I'm going to come up to filter and convert for smart filters again. All right, we're going to come back up to the filter gallery one more time, and I'll zoom out to fit it on the screen. And this time I'll come down here to Stylize, and there's only one thing in under Stylize. It's this glowing edges thing. Okay, so what this does is it will look at the image and it'll put these weird kind of glowing edges on here, and you can change the edge brightness. Okay, you can change the edge width, and you can change the smoothness. Okay, so you can kind of see all that. So basically what you can do here is convert this into line work, and we'll see how that looks here in a second. I'll hit OK on that. So we have something that looks like that. It's kind of weird looking at this point. Okay, so in order for this to work correctly, we actually have to compress this down. So we can't use the smart filter at this point. So I would just say rasterize layer. I'm going to right click on it and rasterize it, and then I'm going to invert this layer using a Control I, or just come up to image, down to adjustments and say invert. Okay, and then we're going to come into back into image again and back down to adjustments and click on desaturate. And what this will do is it'll convert everything that's all these weird kind of neon colors into black and white. So it'll take out the color or desaturate it. So now we have this one. So it depends on whether or not you like the way that this line work looks versus this line work. So you can see there's a difference here between the two. This one looks a little bit different, and this one looks different. And we won't know exactly which one we might want to choose until we get there at the end. So we're going to turn all these off. Okay, and then we're going to come down here to this wash layer, All right, and this time we're going to use a dry brush on this and make it look like it's been painted. So what we're trying to go for here is like a watercolor look. So I want the lines there, and then I'm going to superimpose the lines over the dry brush and make it look like it was done with watercolors. Some people will say, well, why don't you just go into the filter gallery and use watercolors? And the reason that we don't do that is because the watercolors in here doesn't really look that great, and by doing it the way I'm showing you, you have a lot more flexibility over what you're doing. So in the wash layer, we're going to convert that for smart filters. Again, go back up to filter, into the filter gallery, and let's go up here to artistic, and let's look at watercolor. So it's going to go ahead and do this sort of thing. We'll fit it on the view here like this. So here's our watercolor, and you can see here we have brush detail, shadow intensity, and texture. Well, right now it's really dark, so shadow intensity needs to be adjusted down like this. Brush detail, okay, the more detail you put in, the more realistic it's going to look. The less detail you put in, it takes a few minutes for it to readjust, but this is what the watercolor looks like. And it's not too bad, but it's not what we're trying to accomplish here. So I'm going to use the palette knife, and this will kind of make this look like it's like that, kind of artistic-y looking. So I don't even really have to adjust anything on that. I think I'll leave it the way it is and hit OK. All right. So now that I have that and I have this line work above it, we need to talk about blending modes. Okay, so we can blend one layer into another layer up here in the layer list in this little thing right here. And you can see it's broken down into categories where we darken one layer into another layer, or we lighten one layer into another layer, or we overlay one layer into another layer. Or we have these other ones down at the bottom which do some really funky things, and you kind of just have to play with them to see what they do. So to begin with, I'll just click on darken, and what ends up happening is it's going to take the dark pixels and darken it to below, and it's taking the white pixels and making them transparent essentially, because white is the absence of color, and black is going to darken the colors. So so you can see here when you use darken or multiply, see what multiply does. It looks a little bit better. Color burn, don't like that. Linear burn, yeah, not really. Darker color. And you can just go down through the list. Now if you do lighten, okay, it's going to be just the opposite, where it's taking the white and taking it out of the other image. So it's doing just the opposite from what we actually want it to do, where we can say screen and it's kind of lightening the one below. Okay. Then we can try the overlays. Sometimes these work good and sometimes not, but in this case it doesn't really work that good. So you can see what those look like. Okay. So the best bet for line work is to basically come up here and use either darken or multiply. I kind of like multiply look. Okay. And then, like we did two line works here, so if we want to look at this other one, we can put that on and come up to this and change it to darken or multiply, so we can see that one. And this is where layer comps can kind of come into play to kind of give you an idea of, you know, what you might like. So I have layer comps on right now. If you didn't have it on, you can come up to window, come down to layer comps and turn it on. So we can do this, and I can say line work 1. Then I can do this one here. Create another new one. Line work 2. So what's the difference? We get this one versus this one. This one versus this one. I'm not sure which one I like yet, so we're not completely done yet, so we're gonna establish something that makes it look a little bit more watercolory. There's another few different methods, all kinds of different methods to doing this. If you go on the internet and you look up something like how to turn a photo into a watercolor in Photoshop, you're going to get inundated with all the different methods that people have come up with, because there's so many different ways to do it. Some people will actually paint on the screen to make the watercolors. It's a little bit more complicated, but it makes a better looking image. For us, we're just trying to keep it simple for right now, so we'll just do that, keep it simple at this point. But if you want to explore, go on the internet and look, and you'll find out that, you know, yes, you can do all kinds of other things. So I'm going to come down here to my original layer, and I'm going to duplicate this again, and we're going to bring it all the way up to the top, okay, above everything else. All right, we're going to turn it back on, and on this layer here, we're going to come up to do something that's kind of weird. We're going to come up here and say filter, and we're going to come down this list to where it says let's see, is it Stylize, render? Yeah, under render, we're going to come in here and click on difference clouds, and this is going to make our image look really strange like this, okay? And I'm going to invert this image, so we're going to say layer, image actually, adjustments, and invert. So it's either Control or Command I to invert that, so we have something that looks like that. Then we'll change the blend mode for this. We're going to come in here and change it to soft light, and what that does is it kind of puts these spots on, because watercolors will kind of give us that kind of look that makes it look a little bit spotty, if you will, because colors bleed and run and all that sort of stuff. So and we can, you know, do some other things with our line work layers as well to, you know, fuzz them up a little bit. I'll show you that as well here in a second. So with that established, we can go in here and we can actually add a texture to this to make it look like it's more done with a canvas or something like that. So if I come up to filter, we're going to come down to filter gallery, but before we do that, we can convert it to a smart filter again. And so we'll do filter gallery again, and we're going to fit that on our screen. I'm going to come down here to texture, and we're going to come down to the Texturizer, which will, if you look at it, we'll kind of look at it at 100% again. You can see how we have a relief on here now, and our relief can be either brick, it can be burlap, it can be canvas, or it can be sandstone. And I'm going to choose sandstone because it kind of resembles the type of paper that we have here. So you can change the scale and the relief and the way that the light is coming. You can say bottom left or whatever, and it will change the look just a little bit, whatever. So we'll hit OK, and that will put that on. And, you know, it didn't really show up all that much, but it's okay. So now you can start kind of playing around with this and tweaking it a little bit. So here's line work 1, here's line work 2, okay? So now let's do line work 2 with this on. And so when I do that, I want to update this one. So we just click on this and this will update this. And if I go back to line work 1, I can click that on and see what that looks and update that one. So now let's look at the 2. So we have line work 1, line work 2. Which one do we like better? That one's kind of light. I kind of like that one a little bit, but I don't know, the lines are kind of dark. But so let's come back, and I kind of like this one a little bit more, but that one there was using those kind of those glowing lines, so we really can't do too much for adjustments on those. But we could bring this into the filter gallery and we'll kind of convert that for smart filters again, and we'll come back into filter gallery, and this time what we're going to do is, let's see, we could under artistic we could try rough pastels, which will kind of make it look like it's been cross-hatched a little bit. You can change the stroke length on this so it kind of looks like that. Alright, you can change the stroke detail so it makes it look like that. And yeah, so you can see what that does, and if I hit OK, now we have something that looks like that. Okay, and it, if that's too much for you, you can take this line work and change the opacity and bring it down just a little bit, and just kind of bring that down to like 50% or something like that, so it looks like someone kind of sketched this. So so have fun playing with this, and play with the blend modes, work the blend modes, and see what they do. Even subtle changes like changing this wash layer and bringing it above this line work. Watch what happens when I do this. I'll bring this up to here like that, and then change this one to darken or multiply. Okay, so something like that, and it looks different than it did before. Okay, and if you want to bring back some of the original color, you could put that in as well. Okay, because this one has a blend mode of multiply on it, so when I turn this on, you can see it actually darkens that up. And basically with that one, you could change the opacity on that too to kind of lighten it up a little bit, but so you can kind of do something like that. So play around with it, have some fun, and I'll see you in class.